Hi, my name is Robert, and I am a student studying Applied Behavior Analysis at George Mason University. I wanted to take a few minutes to share some information about this science with you and to help you have a better understanding of ABA. Applied Behavior Analysis is a science that is concerned with making improvements to socially significant behaviors. And socially significant basically means that the behavior is of importance to society. This can be as simple as behavior of learning to tie your shoe, or as important as a behavior of learning to stop a self-injurious behavior that is harmful or possibly fatal to oneself. So the spectrum of socially significant is very broad. And ABA practitioners use procedures that have been tested in laboratory settings, and then they apply these evidence-based procedures to more natural settings in order to make changes to behavior that is socially significant. So I'm going to touch on the 7 characteristics of behavior that help ensure the legitimacy of the science. We also have a code of ethics and underlying principles and a number of other things that go into what makes the science so good. But these 7 characteristics really touch on the legitimacy of the science behind it. So the first characteristic of applied behavior analysis is that it is applied. As I touched on earlier, that means that the behavior of interest must be of social significance. And a good example of ABA research that is applied can be found in the literature of childhood feeding disorders, as these are obviously very socially significant behaviors. The second characteristic is that ABA is behavioral. This means that it is concerned with only the study of directly observable behavior. It's important to note that we do acknowledge internal behaviors that occur within a human. We just choose to focus on the external behaviors that are observable and measurable. So some ABA studies that illustrate the emphasis of this characteristic can be found with challenging behaviors in students in classrooms and school environments, because these interventions focus on the specific occurrences of a clearly defined behavior, as well as environmental contingencies surrounding those occurrences, and that rules out any possibility of using a mentalistic label or an excuse such as, oh, that student's just stubborn. Um, so the third characteristic of ABA is that it's analytic. And this just means that we emphasize causal relationships between behaviors of interest, environmental contingencies, and interventions under study. We basically use these scientific procedures and we emphasize the use of single subject designs in order to show prediction, verification, and replication of results. The fourth characteristic of ABA is that it is technological. This means that ABA uses accurate and thorough descriptions of procedures used within the context of research, so that future practitioners can replicate studies and so that they can build upon past research. So the fifth characteristic is that ABA is conceptually systematic. Behavior analysts use basic behavioral principles that have been empirically validated over many years and through many studies. This can include principles such as reinforcement, punishment, extinction, and there are a number of studies that apply these principles, such as the schedule of reinforcement to help people with gambling and drug addictions. Um, the sixth characteristic of ABA is that it is effective. Now, this stresses that the behavior change must be practical and significant. A great example of the effectiveness of ABA can be found in the study of a 12-year-old boy with autism who demonstrated a life-threatening behavior called pica at the rate of 6.7 times per minute. Now, pica is basically when you insert inedible objects into your mouth, and obviously that can be very dangerous, and so they wanted to change that. So they implemented a therapy, and ABA helped to reduce this behavior from 6.7 times per minute to 1.8 times per minute. That seems pretty significant, but according to this characteristic, it was not effective enough. This is a very dangerous behavior. To carry out that behavior still 1.8 times per minute is not effective. So these ABA therapists implemented the procedure again, and they got the occurrence of behavior down closer to 0 times per minute, and they made that that treatment more effective based on that. So the final characteristic of ABA is that it it has generality. And we as ABA therapists ask ourselves, how generalizable are these gains to other settings? Um, and obviously, it is important to learn skills not just in one setting, but to generalize them across settings. So there's a little bit into the definition of ABA and the 7 characteristics that help ensure the legitimacy of the science. I hope that helps.